craziest part of all of this is that they can still turn this around. They really can. Good morning to you. Good Sunday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is a special edition of Daily Shot of Steelers. It usually comes your way bright and early every weekday. Bengals 19, Steelers 17 last night at Acrisure Stadium. An outcome that was every bit as ugly as all of its various ingredients. An overall picture that's even uglier, in that a team that was 10-3 will now not even limp and not even crawl, but pretty much just get dragged across the finish line into the NFL playoffs next week against either the Ravens or the Texans. And in the immediate aftermath, the emphasis, and this came from Mike Tomlin, and it was obvious that it did because he brought it up at his press conference, and then all of a sudden, you're going through the locker room interviewing the players, and all you hear is the same line. You'll hear it here in a question that I had for Keanu Benton about, how they're going to move on from this 4-game losing streak.
I think our mindset is just a single elimination tournament, which is the playoffs. You just got to go out there and give it our all. You lose, you go home. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
It's a clean slate. You have to approach it as a clean slate, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you learn from your mistakes, but you can't bear those feelings from losses onto this playoff game. So, like you said, a clean slate. Go out there and be the team we want to be.
The key phrase in there was single elimination tournament. You're going to hear it all week long because I heard it all the way around the room, almost as if it was like a circle that was following me. And you know what? There's no disputing it. They're going to be in this single elimination tournament. And as a result, to re-stress this, they can still salvage this. How? Okay, they go to Baltimore and they beat the Ravens. And then they're just one of 8 teams that are left standing in the NFL, and nobody remembers any of this. That's not me positive spinning it here. That's actually the truth. Now, what's also the truth is that this team, I think, is in no shape to actually do this. And that's in large part because this collapse, and that's what it is right now, my friends. There's not a gentler word for it. This collapse begins with the coaches. If you've been listening to me or reading my stuff for any amount of time, you'll know that I'm not real big on laying everything on the coaches when the team loses, but then not ever mentioning the coaches whenever they win. I try, don't always succeed, but I try to be fair with this sort of thing. But you tell me what I'm supposed to do with a scenario in which Tomlin tells everybody, because when he tells it to us, he's telling it to you, after that Christmas loss to the Chiefs, that there's got to be change. There's going to be changes. We're going to be looking through this and looking through that. And then he and the staff show up for this game, this really, really significant game, and don't do a damn thing differently. You tell me what I'm supposed to do with that, especially when I spend the whole week sharing with you at least possibilities for what it is that they could do, should do, based on my opinion. But then I always couch that by pointing out that there's no chance that they're actually going to do any of that. And then they don't. They don't. There was one blitz in the first series, and it wasn't even a full blitz. It was more Patrick Queen going and taking out a couple of blockers and freeing room for somebody else to go in. There were a couple other occasions where someone from the secondary would step forward, but that's it. That is it. That was the big change. Remember the hints that Tomlin threw out there that Jaylen Warren was going to be his number 1 running back? What did he do last night? Went with Najee Harris. Why? Because he can't quit Najee. Fourth quarter, Najee's hurt. got banged in the head, went to the blue tent, appeared to be shut down. Connor Hayward makes a huge play on special teams. Huge play, recovers the fumble. This is it. This is the Bengals being the Bungles, and everything's being set up for you. And who does Tomlin send out to be his running back? Cordero Patterson, who has shown nothing all season long, with the exception of a couple of fun bursts in Indianapolis several months ago. First play Arthur Smith calls, a pitch to Patterson. Goes for 1 yard. Patterson later in the series commits a penalty. Drive goes nowhere. Where was Jalen? Who knows? Later, Keanu Benton makes another big play. Sacks Joe Burrow by the shoestring. Forces the punt. Steelers get the ball back. And who's out there at running back? Najee. Najee was wobbling off the field, my friends. I was watching this. I don't know if they showed this stuff on TV or not. He was wobbling off the field when he got hit. Tomlin would rather die on the hill of Najee and send him out there without the guy being able to spell his own name than he would to put Jalen out there. Why? Because he's gonna be right. That went nowhere either. Now you might wonder, wow, maybe Jalen was hurt. Maybe there's something wrong with Jalen. Nope. We checked. Meaning we at DK Pittsburgh Sports went right up to Jalen. How are you? How are you doing? Are you healthy? Yes. That is idiotic. Throwing one pass to Mike Williams after he makes a great catch. Not good, not very good, great catch along the sidelines on his only target. That's idiotic. Letting poor Corey Trice, a second-year guy who didn't really have a first year, line up repeatedly all game long against Jamar Chase. And only whenever it became pathetically obvious that the Bengals were picking on Trice, finally in the fourth quarter, did it occur to anybody, whether it was Terrell Austin or Tomlin himself, to flip Joey Porter to the other side. That's idiotic. Handing the opponent in a tight game, in a critical game, 3 freebie points just before the end of the first half by going for a fourth and fairly long at your own 40-yard line, that's idiotic. And what's maybe the most uncomfortable, the most ominous about everything that I'm describing here is that I could do this segment for probably about an hour and keep using that same motif. It's one of the worst coached games I've ever covered. And the only thing that could and does make it that much worse is that it's just a continuation. It's just, hey, we're going to keep doing pitch outs to the running back because we're going to show everybody that we were smart to have them in the first place when they hardly ever work. That's idiotic, egotistical, self-flagellating, and self-damaging, and no counter to the entirety of the Tomlin press conference that followed. It's not all on the players, and it's not all on the weighty downs, and it's not all on the turnovers and takeaways and who did or didn't pounce on a loose football or any of these other, basically, they're talking points more than anything at this stage. It's as if he's trying to talk his way out of what's actually happening to have us thinking anything other than that he might have been wrong about a whole bunch of stuff. And all he's doing by trying to erase that notion is just being more and more wrong. When we come back, J1Q. Today's J1Q comes from Lori, who says, DK, honestly, what would it take for Mike Tomlin to get fired? Lori, the Steelers have lost 4 games in a row. They've lost 4 games after winning 10 of their first 13. They've lost 4 games after putting together enough individual and foundational components, statistically and otherwise, for a convincing case that the 10-3 was real. To me, the biggest disservice you can do to dissecting what's gone wrong with this team is to suggest, well, this is what it should have been all along. This is the chickens coming home to roost. Because no, it isn't. The Steelers had metrics that supported everything that they were doing. Defensively, on special teams, even with the offense. Do not give anyone associated with this collapse the get out of jail free card that they should have stunk all along, because it's just not accurate. Don't give them that card, even in the context that you look at their schedule, and the schedule is obviously a lot heavier now than it was then. Because no, the Steelers were a better team, plain and simple, when they were 10-3. Not just because of their opponents, but because they were a better team. They did things better. They executed real live plays on real live football fields on real live Sundays. And they did it to the extent, let's remember, that they were both a top 10 defense and a top 10 offense for a time. And of course, number bleeping 1 in special teams. So the players, at least most of them, are there. I feel like we've been over this quite a lot in recent weeks, but other than the offensive line, and specifically the 2 tackle positions, to my eyes, the personnel have been there. Oh, I mean, I hear you coming back at me with, okay, well, who are the wide receivers beyond George Pickens? How about Mike Williams? What does Williams have to do to merit getting more than a single target a game when you're watching Van Jefferson deluxe in the second half? You can say nickel corner, but who was it that was advocating on this very program that Beanie Bishop needs to be back in there, Cam Sutton needs to be out? What ends up happening? Cam blitzes for no reason whatsoever on the early Jamar Chase touchdown. Corey Trice gets hung up alone. Trice turns around, holds his hands up as if to say, what was that? Where was that? Wasn't supposed to be how that went. And you see Patrick Queen doing the same thing. And where was Cam? There he was with another rogue blitz that, by the way, achieved nothing. Whereas Beanie finally at least gets back into the action, and guess what? Makes an enormous play for the Steelers with another interception. So is nickel a problem, or is the usage of your personnel a problem? Is wide receiver 2 a problem, or is not utilizing Williams a problem? That's coaching. That's decisions that are being made well above the players' heads. So I'll come back to it. The shortcomings at the player level, to me, have been the tackles, have been Dan Moore and Broderick Jones, and they were again last night. They were collapsing like accordions. That's more of a player thing than a coaching thing, although I'm sure we could work coaching into that as well. While also wondering, at least parenthetically, is there really nobody on the roster who could play tackle and just hold a block? Or, here again, is it more important to just be right, to show everybody that you were right, you picked the right player, you coached them up, and you stuck by them, and then whenever things got well for a little bit, you could brag at a podium that this is why you get paid a lot of money. Anyone else remember that one? That was Tomlin boasting publicly, really weirdly too, and seemingly out of character, because I hadn't seen him do anything like that before in his career, that he'd made the right call by benching Justin Fields in favor of Russell Wilson. Not hearing much about that one anymore, are we? I appreciate the question, Lori. I appreciate everybody who listens to Daily Shot of Steelers. We'll be back with the regular one tomorrow.